Ah, you look tantalizing. You know, I make fun of The View a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Because COVID also taught Sunny Hostin how to get her groceries delivered.
3 years, that's when I discovered Instacart. And I give them a big tip because they don't always pay their people well. And so that's been an issue, I think, for the company. But man, you can get toiletries, you can get fire logs.
Fire logs? She had to tell the audience that she tips big because even she knows she sounds insane.
The term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized. So I was surprised to hear you use the term because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the Black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words
and so
migrate.
why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Don't tell me that the left hasn't changed. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Ever wondered what it feels like to be verbally steamrolled on national TV with a smile still frozen on your face? Just ask Sunny Hostin. Because Greg Gutfeld and Bill Maher teamed up and delivered a takedown so brutal even her co-hosts winced. Gutfeld fired off sarcasm like a caffeine-fueled cannon. Maher brought the smug logic of a man allergic to nonsense. And Sunny? She was left blinking like the Wi-Fi went out mid-rant. What triggered the chaos? Oh, it's gloriously messy.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions? Like you said, and it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. So, but the problem with her is that
If I had any doubt that I was right about the change that's happened in the left, watching people protest for a terrorist organization like Hamas, that straightened me up pretty quick.
You can see the way Sunny Hostin, the way she's touching her above her eye, she can't even look at him because she's an activist, not a journalist or whatever it is that she purports.
Imagine waking up every morning and choosing to be the human embodiment of a LinkedIn humble brag mixed with a Facebook mom group moderator. That's Sunny Hostin, a walking masterclass in how to wield elitism like a participation trophy and still expect applause. She doesn't just bring opinions to the table. She drags in an entire antique buffet filled with unsolicited moral superiority, sprinkled with a generous side of, I Googled this 5 minutes ago, therefore I'm an expert. Enter Greg Gutfeld.
it's about The View. It's become like a medical hospital that displays human misfailure. Like, it's like here, let's look at this political oddity. You know, it's like, it really is like the left-wing equivalent of a carnival sideshow, except instead of bearded ladies and fat clowns and two-headed cows. Well, let me rephrase that. But The View is a victim of the sunk cost fallacy. You know, how can...
Gutfeld and Bill Maher. Two men who couldn't be more ideologically different, yet found common ground in the strange safari that is Sunny Hostin's logic. One's a chaos goblin from Fox News with the grin of a raccoon in a dumpster. The other's an HBO curmudgeon who chains sarcasm and disillusionment like it's his cardio. And yet, nothing unites like a shared enemy of rational thought. Sunny has made an art form out of speaking in bullet points written by someone's
Now speak the truth, and when for years you've been telling lie after lie after lie, now you're carrying this big bag of rocks around you because it's too harmful for their ego to admit that we really were dishonest. And they could be honest. All they would have to say is, look, we hate Trump so much, we were willing to lie about Joe Biden because we felt he was preferable. We thought our lying and our cover-up was on your behalf. Just say that. You're still scum, but at least you're honest.
grad thesis on oppression, but with the flair of a PTA president campaigning for vice principal. She doesn't debate. She declares, with the fervor of someone who believes strongly in facts, but only the one she emotionally agrees with. Ask her to explain inflation and she'll cite a brunch anecdote about oat milk prices and systemic injustice in the yogurt aisle. Gutfeld naturally had a field day. He didn't even need to break a sweat.
If you think that's bad, The View's co-host, Sunny Hostin, says, hold my beer, and is literally claiming Republican women can't think for themselves.
I think that women, white women in particular, want to protect the patriarchy here because it's to their benefit. They want to make sure that their husbands do well. They want to make sure that their sons do well. They want to make sure that their children do well. And they want to make sure that they do well. Most of the women in some of these studies are married white women, and they do fall in line with what their husbands
Watching Sunny try to intellectualize current events is like watching someone read Shakespeare through a kaleidoscope. Every opinion is filtered through a foggy lens of personal grievance and the distinct aroma of someone who read half a New York Times headline and considered that academic research. Greg, whose entire persona is Twitter troll with a budget, just leaned in, raised an eyebrow, and let the inconsistencies devour themselves. Maher, you know it's bad when the guy who yells at clouds for fun is more coherent than your hot takes. Maher didn't even...
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. Here's how she took the news. Roll it.
Wow.
Roast Sunny. He dismantled her like a bored IKEA customer taking apart furniture out of spite. He thrives in discomfort, and Sunny delivered that like DoorDash, fast, overpriced, and utterly disappointing. At one point, she implied, without blinking, that having nuanced conversations was, in fact, a form of privilege. This is the rhetorical equivalent of saying rain is classist because some people own umbrellas. It's a take so backwards it should be moonwalking. And both Maher and Gutfeld just stood there, probably wondering how someone with a law degree could weaponize victimhood with such precision, like it's a LinkedIn skill endorsement. The thing about Sunny is she doesn't really want dialogue. She wants applause breaks. She wants every segment to end with someone handing her a trophy and telling her she's brave for saying something marginally controversial in a room full of people contractual obligated to nod. She's that student in class who raises her hand every 5 minutes to remind the teacher she read the homework and has thoughts, none of which are useful, but all of which she insists are revolutionary. Greg Gutfeld, who practically breathes mockery, just took that self-satisfaction and spun it into gold. He didn't even need a punchline. Sunny is her own punchline. She could say good morning, and somehow make it about how capitalism ruined coffee beans. She speaks like she's narrating a self-help audiobook for people who exclusively shop at Whole Foods and only listen to NPR on vintage radios. What makes it even more entertaining is that she thinks she's the voice of reason. She genuinely believes her takes are the intellectual bedrock of American discourse.
Here's a treat for you. The insufferable Sunny Hostin getting a beatdown from Bill Maher on Gaza.
We're all concerned about the innocent civilians that have been collectively punished and murdered, largely children and women. And are you at all concerned about the fact that the International Criminal Court just today issued a subpoena for Bibi Netanyahu?
Well, that's ridiculous, but it's a war.
Why?
Because it's a war, and they were attacked, and they're defending themselves. Now, this is a war. Do you think Hamas needs to be destroyed? This is the question.
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
So how can we do that with a ceasefire?
All right. So Hamas needs to be destroyed because they are a terrorist organization who say openly that they want to commit genocide on the Jewish people.
Meanwhile, Gutfeld and Maher are over here playing whack-a-mole with the contradictions, and the mallet is labeled basic common sense. Maher's roast was especially poetic. He's that guy at the bar who drinks one bourbon and starts talking about the fall of Rome. So watching him reduce Sunny's argument to philosophical sawdust was almost an art performance. At one point, she claimed a certain demographic couldn't possibly understand systemic issues unless they had personally experienced them. Maher responded by reminding her that reality doesn't come with a prerequisite course in personal trauma. That's the thing. Sunny talks like experience is the only valid credential, unless of course your experience disagrees with her opinion. Then you're just wrong, and possibly a tool of the patriarchy. The only thing more flexible than her logic is a yoga instructor on Adderall. She flips from one dramatic assertion to another, hoping no one notices the trail of intellectual debris she leaves behind. Meanwhile, Gutfeld doesn't even use facts. He uses tone. Sarcasm is his weapon of choice, and Sunny practically hand-delivered the ammo. Watching her get spun into confusion by a man whose primary contribution to journalism is dad jokes wrapped in libertarian cynicism was a gift. She tried to gotcha him with a moral appeal, and Greg responded like someone who just got asked if he wanted fries with that virtue signal. And the most painful part? She never even realized it. She's not aware she's being roasted. It's like watching someone walk into a glass door repeatedly while insisting the building is racist. She keeps presenting these
a lot of fun. But Bill Maher did get to go on The View, and he said some things that offended the small minds over there. So he had a bit of a debate with the intellectual titan, Sunny Hostin. She was upset with him for using the word woke, and Bill Maher took her to school.
Half-baked arguments as fully formed philosophies and then acts shocked when they collapse like a bad souffle. Bill Maher's final jab was practically existential. He asked rhetorically how someone can claim to be open-minded while simultaneously canceling anyone who slightly disagrees. Sunny's response? Silence, naturally, because the Wi-Fi signal of logic doesn't reach whatever philosophical void she broadcasts from. What's truly tragic, in a comedy of Summers kind of way, is that Sunny could have been great, a lawyer, a journalist, a commentator. She has the resume of someone who should know better. But instead of leaning into intelligence, she leaned into identity. Every topic becomes a sermon. Every disagreement is oppression. Every question is an attack. It's activism by aesthetic, where you don't have to solve anything. You just have to sound really outraged while offering zero solutions. And Maher and Gutfeld, they don't even need to be allies in this war. They're like rival assassins who just happen to take out the same target by accident. Watching them both converge on Sunny's crumbling soapbox was like witnessing a bipartisan roast of nonsense. A rare moment of national unity bonded by mutual eye rolls and the absurdity of a woman who can't tell the difference between being challenged and being persecuted. Sunny Hostin says things with the confidence of someone who's never been corrected in a group chat. She believes in the power of her voice so deeply that it becomes a force field against self-awareness. And while she's busy crusading against every perceived microaggression, Maher and Gutfeld are sipping metaphorical tea, wondering how someone can speak so much and say so little. Let's talk about that voice, that tone. It's not just what she says, it's how she says it. It's the auditory equivalent of a Prius honking in passive aggression. Her cadence rises like a crescendo of condescension, as if every
I make fun of The View a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Those hens are always clucking. They get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, and then I get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, except on purpose. But every now and then, one of those dingbats inadvertently says something that reveals modern liberal thought so perfectly it deserves further study. You know, like a weird serpent that washed up on the beach and you want to poke it with a
statement comes pre-approved by a panel of smugness consultants. And she never just disagrees. She descends with the gravity of a Supreme Court ruling, as though correcting her is a constitutional crisis. Gutfeld's genius is that he doesn't even bother arguing point for point. He pokes, he prods, and then sits back and watches the contradictions unravel like an old cable knit sweater. It's chaos strategy. Let the self-righteousness combust under its own heat. It's not hard when your opponent keeps stepping on every metaphorical rake in the yard. Maher, the elder cynic, just sprinkles his disillusionment like salt on an open wound. He doesn't roast Sunny for sport. He roasts her because someone needs to. He's the guy in the back of the room yelling, "The Emperor has no clothes," while Sun is still on stage stitching new garments out of anecdotal indignation. And we haven't even gotten to her obsession with being the moral compass of a nation that didn't ask for directions. Every debate becomes a TED Talk. Every disagreement becomes a moral failing. She doesn't discuss ideas. She excommunicates them. Like logic is a club and she's the bouncer turning away anyone in flat shoes. She calls for empathy but practices none. She demands understanding but won't offer it. She preaches tolerance like it's a one-way street with her name on it. The only consistency in her rhetoric is the constant hum of double standards playing the world's smallest violin. Greg Gutfeld might as well have been reading cue cards from the audience, because every single one of Sunny's talking points had a neon kick me sign taped to it. She referenced systemic injustice. Greg asked how that explains her salary. She claimed to be the voice of the unheard. Maher and Gutfeld weren't even trying to destroy her. They were trying to rescue the conversation from the burning wreckage of her logic before it took the rest of the panel down with it. But of course, Sunny didn't notice. She never does. She stood there, arms crossed in rhetorical defiance, waiting for the applause that never came. Because at the end of the day, people don't clap for someone who confuses volume with value or certainty with correctness. The irony of all this, Sunny still believes she won that exchange. She walked away convinced she had defended truth, justice, and whatever buzzword was trending on Twitter that morning. Meanwhile, Gutfeld walked off smirking, and Maher probably lit a cigar with one of her cue cards. In the history books of daytime TV disasters, this one goes right between Dr. Ounce runs for Senate and Kanye gives marriage advice. A beautiful, flaming mess of ego, echo chambers, and empty applause. And just like that, Sunny Hostin added another chapter to her long, slow descent into being the most unintentionally hilarious part of The View. Not because she's funny, but because nothing is more comical than someone
his willingness to say to Sunny Hostin that you can call it whatever you want, but we're talking about the radical left. It is amazing how they then just attempt to redirect the conversation.
Delivering nonsense with the confidence of Socrates. There's something almost poetic about someone who weaponizes indignation like it's part of a morning routine. Sunny doesn't just participate in conversation, she hosts a one-woman Broadway show of grievance. Every opinion is delivered like a final judgment. Every glance, like a subpoena. She's not discussing topics. She's issuing sentences with a tone so tightly wound it could floss the Statue of Liberty. She manages to turn the simplest statement into a crusade against phantom oppressors no one else sees. While Maher casually dismantles her arguments like he's pulling loose threads from a sweater, Sunny stands firm in her house of straw, mistaking its flimsiness for flexibility. And Gutfeld? He doesn't even try to outsmart her. He just holds up a mirror and lets her trip over her own reflection. It's not so much a debate as it is a one-sided soliloquy colliding with a sarcasm cannon. This isn't ideological warfare, it's rhetorical slapstick. Picture an intellectual seesaw where Sunny's end is weighed down with recycled buzzwords and faux outrage, while the other side floats calmly, sipping irony through a paper straw. She's convinced she's winning, not realizing the scoreboard was unplugged ages ago.
Game probably virtue signals on the toilet. But that's not the point here. While everybody else was trying to figure out how to survive as the government told us that breathing in public could kill us, Sunny was lolling around in her big house clicking on pictures of arugula while mixing Cocoa Puffs into her hog